On the morning of my wedding, I got a voicemail from my boss's wife. Not my boss, his wife. She left it at 7:14 a.m. while I was sitting in the hotel salon chair getting my hair pinned up, and the message was 43 seconds long. I remember because I played it 3 times, and each time I counted. Her exact words were, "Sweetheart, I just wanted you to know that Garrett made a decision last night about the director position. He went with someone else. Effective immediately. Your role at the firm is being restructured. You don't need to come in Monday. We'll mail your final check. Congratulations on the wedding, truly." She called me sweetheart. She said truly. I set my phone face down on the vanity and looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was half up. There were bobby pins between my teeth. The woman doing my updo was humming something I didn't recognize. I didn't cry. I didn't say a word about it. I asked her to make the curls a little tighter on the left side. My name is Alara and I'm 29 years old. For 3 years I had been the lead systems architect at a mid-sized wealth management firm in downtown Chicago. I had built from scratch the proprietary client portfolio engine that processed over $400 million in assets daily. I had done it with a team of 2 junior developers, a coffee maker that only worked half the time, and a salary that was, I later confirmed, 32% below market rate for my role. My boss was a man named Garrett. He had a firm handshake, an expensive watch, and a habit of taking credit for things he didn't understand. His wife Beverly functioned as his unofficial office manager, social secretary, and, apparently, his designated messenger for firing people on their wedding day. I had known something was coming. My husband knew it too. Let me tell you about my husband. His name is Wesley, and he is 34 years old. He is a contracts attorney who spent 7 years doing intellectual property litigation before pivoting to forensic consulting. He finds things people try to hide. Financial structures, buried clauses, shell entities. He is very quiet and very good at his job, and he has a particular look he gets when someone has made a catastrophic mistake in front of him. It's not angry. It's almost gentle, like he's sorry for what's about to happen to you. He had that look the night before our wedding when I told him I'd noticed Garrett had stopped looping me into client meetings. We'd talked through every scenario. We had a plan for all of them. I didn't tell my mother about the voicemail. I didn't tell my sister either. My mother, whose name is Constance, had spent the last 3 years telling everyone at her church group that her daughter was a director at a finance firm, even though I was not, in fact, a director. She had inflated my title the way other people inflate their home renovations, a little more square footage each time she told the story. My sister, whose name is Britt, had married a man named Fletcher 2 years ago. Fletcher considered himself a real estate investor, though what he actually did was spend Britt's teaching salary on deals that never closed and talk loudly at family dinners about opportunities. They had been looking forward to my wedding the way people look forward to a buffet. They wanted to be adjacent to something that looked like success. The ceremony was at 4 o'clock. A small venue on the north side, exposed brick, good light, 47 people. Wesley's parents flew in from Portland. His sister cried during the vows. It was, genuinely, the most peaceful 2 hours of my life. The reception was in the same building, a connected room with tall windows and a long wooden bar. We had a live jazz trio. We had excellent wine. We had a seating chart I had spent 3 weeks on. I was at the sweetheart table with Wesley when his hand closed over mine under the tablecloth. "Your watch," he said quietly, not looking at me. I glanced down. My smartwatch had lit up with a forwarded notification. My work email was still synced. There, in the small bright rectangle on my wrist, was a message from Garrett's personal account, sent to the senior partners. It said in part that the firm was moving in a new direction, and that my systems contract had been internally resolved. Internally resolved. Fletcher saw it from 2 tables away. I don't know how. The man had the instincts of a hyena and the subtlety of a car alarm. He stood up with his wine glass still in his hand and walked over with a wide smile that had nothing warm in it. "Alara." He set his glass on our table without being invited to do so. "Is that what I think it is?" I turned my wrist down slowly. He laughed. Not loudly, not yet. He looked back at Britt first, making sure she was watching. and then he turned back to me with the particular expression of a man who has been waiting a long time to say something. "I told Britt this would happen," he said. "I told her, you can't build your whole career on one product for one company and think you're untouchable. That's not how it works, sweetheart." He used the same word Beverly had used that morning. "Sweetheart, the real world has real rules," he continued, warming up now, half-turned toward the nearest tables where my mother and Britt were sitting. "No offense, but the whole tech genius thing only goes so far. At some point you need actual business relationships. You need to know how to work a room. That's not something you can code." Britt let out a soft, practiced sigh. "Fletcher, maybe this isn't the time." But she didn't mean it. I could tell from the way she sat, very still, with her hands folded, that she wanted to hear the rest of it. My mother stood up. Constance is a woman of great conviction and very fast reflexes when she believes her social standing is at risk. She covered the distance from her table to ours in about 6 steps, gripping her clutch like it owed her money. "Ilara," she said, pulling me slightly by the elbow away from the table, "is this about the firm? Beverly called me last week and mentioned there might be changes." "Beverly called you?" "She and I are in the same charity auxiliary, you know that." She mentioned it very casually. She said Garrett was reorganizing. And I told her I was sure you'd land on your feet. "You knew?" My mother had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable for approximately 2 seconds. "I didn't want to bring it up before the wedding. I thought maybe it would work itself out. But now, listen to me, you need to call Garrett tonight. I know it's your wedding night, but this is important. You call him and you apologize for whatever happened, and you ask for your job back before someone else is sitting in your chair by Monday morning." "Apologize," I said. "You can be difficult," she said. "I love you, but you can be very difficult, and sometimes with men like Garrett you just have to be a little more flexible," Fletcher offered helpfully. "Gracious," my mother said. "A little more gracious." I looked at the two of them. Then I looked at Britt, who was examining the centerpiece with great interest. I thought about the voicemail at 7:14 in the morning. I thought about the 43 seconds of it. I thought about the 3 years of 70-hour weeks, the portfolio engine that was currently processing $400 million of other people's money, the patent application I had quietly filed 14 months ago on the core sorting algorithm at the heart of that engine. I thought about Wesley sitting beside me, his thumb drawing a slow circle on the back of my hand. I picked up my champagne glass. "Mother," I said, "I need you to sit back down and enjoy the party." "Ilara, I'm not calling Garrett." I kept my voice even. "I'm not apologizing. And I'd like you to go back to your table." My mother's face cycled through several emotions in quick succession. She landed on wounded dignity. Fletcher shook his head slowly, the way people do when they want you to know they think you're making a mistake. "Your loss," he said. "Genuinely. I hope you have a backup plan." I smiled at him. "I do," I said. "I really do." They went back to their table. Wesley leaned close to me. "Ready?" "Not yet," I said. "Let's finish the champagne first." We danced, we ate. The jazz trio played something slow and old-fashioned that I didn't know the name of. Wesley's mother hugged me twice. His sister told me she'd always wanted a sister, and I believed her. At 10:15, Wesley and I excused ourselves for a few minutes. We took the back staircase to a small event room the venue had let us reserve. Wesley had left a bag up there earlier in the day. He opened it and took out a laptop and a slim gray folder. I sat down at the table in my wedding dress and we worked for 35 minutes. What we did was not dramatic. It was administrative. Wesley accessed the secure legal server where my patent documentation was stored and confirmed that the filing was airtight and time-stamped well before any of Garrett's recent maneuvers. I sent 2 emails from my personal account. One to a contact at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. One to a lawyer in Wesley's firm who specialized in IP licensing disputes. Then I forwarded Garrett's email, the one that said my contract had been internally resolved, to both of them with a single line of context. Wesley closed the laptop. "The algorithm," he said, "is yours." "It always was," I said. We went back downstairs. Nobody had noticed we were gone. Fletcher was at the bar, explaining something about cap rates to Wesley's father, who was too polite to leave. My mother was telling someone about the centerpieces. I had another glass of champagne. I meant it this time. Monday morning came the way Monday mornings do after you've had exactly 4 hours of sleep and too much sparkling wine. Wesley made coffee. I put on the most professional thing I had packed for the start of what was supposed to be a week off. A white button-down and dark trousers, and we drove to the firm. I had an 8 o'clock appointment with Garrett. He didn't know that yet. The building lobby was the same as it always was. The security guard at the front desk had worked there for 6 years. He looked up when I came in, glanced at the visitor sticker I'd printed at home, and waved me through with barely a pause. Habit is a powerful thing. The elevator took me to the 14th floor. Garrett's assistant was not at her desk yet. Garrett himself was in his glass-walled office, standing with a coffee cup and looking out at the street below. He had the body language of a man who had recently done something he felt good about. Shoulders back. Wait easy. I knocked on the open door. He turned around and went very still. Lara. He set the coffee down. I thought Beverly said she called you. I assumed you understood the situation. I understood the voicemail, I said. Can I sit down? He gestured at the chair across from his desk. And I sat, and he sat, and he put on a version of his serious face. I want you to know this wasn't personal, he said. The board has been pushing for consolidation in the technology budget, and your role as it existed didn't fit the new structure. We're bringing in an outside vendor to manage the portfolio systems going forward. Which vendor? I asked. He named a firm, one of the large ones, nationally recognized. I nodded. And they've confirmed they can integrate with the current architecture? We're in the process of. Because the current architecture runs on a proprietary algorithm, I said. The one I built, it's not open source, it's not transferable. And as of 14 months ago, it's patented in my name. Garrett's mouth didn't quite close all the way. I filed a provisional application in February of last year, I said. The full patent was granted in November. The USPTO registration number is in that folder. I set the slim gray folder on his desk. He didn't reach for it. He stopped. That's the firm's intellectual property. You built it on company time, on company systems. I built the foundational version during my unpaid leave in the summer before I joined the firm, I said. The documentation reflects that. Wesley and I were fairly thorough about the timeline. He looked at me for a long moment. I could see him trying to find the version of this where he was still holding something. Even if that's true, he said carefully, the firm has been operating on that system for 3 years. We have a reasonable claim to continued licensing. You do, I agreed. That's actually what I'm here to discuss. Wesley came through the door at that moment. He had been in the lobby. He moved to stand slightly behind and to the right of my chair. And he did not say hello to Garrett. He just set his own folder on the desk, much thicker than mine, and stood there. Garrett looked at him. Then back at me. Your firm terminated my employment, I said. Without documented cause, without the 60-day notice required by my original contract, and in a manner that, we believe, was timed deliberately to coincide with my wedding day, so that I would be emotionally destabilized and less likely to respond effectively. We have the voicemail, we have the timestamp, we have Beverly's phone records from last week showing she called my mother, which suggests the decision was made and socially managed well before I was officially notified. Garrett was very quiet. The patent on the algorithm is valid, I continued. The licensing agreement you currently have, the one embedded in my employment contract, terminated the moment my employment terminated. As of Friday, you don't have the right to run your portfolio system. Every transaction it's processed at 7 a.m. Saturday morning is operating on infrastructure you don't legally control. I let that sit for a moment. I want you to understand, I said, that I'm not here to be vindictive. I'm here because you made a business decision and I'm making one too. I'm prepared to offer the firm a licensing agreement for continued use of the algorithm. It will be at fair market rate, which my team has assessed at substantially more than I was being paid annually. Alternatively, you can attempt to rebuild the system from scratch, which will take your outside vendor approximately 8 to 14 months and will require you to explain to your clients and your board why the portfolio engine went dark. I stood up. I'll give you until Thursday, I said. Wesley will send the licensing terms this afternoon. I picked up my folder and left. I was in the elevator when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, with a 312 area code. I answered it. Is this Alara? A woman's voice, brisk and professional. It is. This is the executive assistant for Daniel Ashworth at Meridian Capital Group. Mr. Ashworth would like to schedule a call with you at your earliest convenience. He said to tell you it's regarding the Clearwater algorithm. I looked at Wesley. He was reading his phone, very calm. How did Mr. Ashworth hear about the Clearwater algorithm? I asked. He said he's been aware of it for some time, she said. He's been waiting for it to become available. I told her Thursday would work. Let me tell you what happened to the people who thought this was funny. Fletcher found out about the licensing dispute through my mother, who found out through Beverly, who apparently regretted making that phone call to my mother's charity auxiliary once it became clear that the call created a paper trail. Beverly called my mother again on Tuesday to clarify some things. And my mother, for once in her life, did not answer. Because Wesley had advised her not to. Fletcher decided on Tuesday evening to reach out to Garrett directly. He had some vague notion of inserting himself as a mediator, of being the person who smooths things over and got a finder's fee for it, or a consulting role or something. He sent Garrett an email describing himself as a close family contact with relevant relationships, and offering to facilitate dialogue. Garrett did not respond to the email. His attorney did, 48 hours later, with a note asking Fletcher to cease any communication related to the matter. Fletcher then tried to call me. I didn't answer. He texted. I didn't respond. He texted Britt to ask her to talk to me, and Britt texted me to ask if I was okay, which was the first text from her that wasn't somehow about Fletcher. So I actually did respond to that one. I told her I was more than okay. She asked if we could have lunch. I said yes. At lunch, Britton ordered the thing she actually wanted instead of the cheapest item on the menu, which she usually did when Fletcher was present. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I asked her how things were and she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "He knew about the voicemail before you did. Beverly told him at a thing they were both at Saturday morning and he didn't tell me, and I didn't know until he was already walking toward your table at the reception. I didn't say anything. I should have told him to sit down," she said. I should have said something. You didn't say anything, I said. That's different from what he did. She looked at her plate. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said. I told her I was glad. I meant it. The Thursday call with Daniel Ashworth went long. He was methodical and precise, and he asked very specific questions about the algorithm's scalability. By the end of it, he had proposed an acquisition offer for the patent itself, not a license, an outright purchase, with a separate employment package that included an equity stake, a proper title, and a salary that was exactly what the work had been worth all along. I asked for a week to review with Wesley. Wesley reviewed it for 2 days and said it was legitimate and fair, with 3 clauses he wanted adjusted. The clauses were adjusted. I signed on a Friday afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table, in the apartment that was now technically our apartment since we'd finished combining our leases. Wesley poured 2 glasses of good scotch, which we don't usually drink. But the occasion seemed to call for something that felt like it cost something. To knowing what you have before someone tells you it's gone, he said. I touched my glass to his. The firm, Garrett's firm, signed the licensing agreement 2 days before my deadline. The rate was steep. They paid it. They didn't have a choice. Their outside vendor confirmed they would need 18 months minimum to reverse engineer the system, not 14, which was the more optimistic estimate Wesley had deliberately used in the room to make me seem slightly more reasonable than I actually was. Beverly stopped attending the charity auxiliary. My mother told me this with a complicated expression, the kind she gets when she's not sure whether to be sorry or satisfied. I told her she could be both. We had a longer conversation that afternoon than we'd had in years. I told her about the voicemail at 7:14, about counting the seconds, about sitting in the salon chair with bobby pins between my teeth and deciding not to cry. She was quiet for a moment after that. I should have told you Beverly called me, she said. I thought I was protecting you from something you couldn't fix. I could fix it, I said. I just needed to do it on my own terms. She nodded slowly. You've always been like that. Is that a complaint? No, she said. I just never knew what to do with it. I thought that was honest, at least. Probably the most honest she'd been about it. I didn't press her on the rest. On the years of quietly diminishing what I did, on the inflated job titles she'd been giving me to strangers, which was its own kind of condescension, turning my real work into a performance for her social circle. We didn't resolve any of that in one afternoon. But we stayed at the table long enough to finish the coffee, which was more than we'd managed in a while. 6 months later, I was sitting in a corner office on the 31st floor of a building in River North, looking at a city I'd lived in for 7 years and only now felt like I actually owned a piece of. On my desk was a business card that said my actual title. Below the title was the name of the fund, which was Meridian, and below that was a direct line that rang to an assistant I still wasn't used to having. Wesley worked 3 floors below me. We carpooled when the weather was bad and took separate trains when it wasn't, which was a compromise we'd negotiated over the first week, and mostly honored. I got an email that morning from a junior developer who had recently been let go from a mid-sized firm in a budget restructuring. She had a portfolio of work she was proud of and wasn't sure what it was worth. She'd found my name through a mutual contact and wanted to know if I had any advice. I wrote back the same afternoon. I told her to find out exactly what she had built, what rights she held to it, and who else might need it. I told her to talk to a lawyer before she signed anything, and not to let anyone tell her that the urgency was on her side when it wasn't. I told her that the people who try to take things from you in a hurry are usually the ones who can't afford to wait. She wrote back to say thank you. I clicked send on something else and got back to work. The city was bright and cold outside the window. The algorithm was running on 16 portfolios now, pulling data across 3 time zones, sorting and sorting and sorting without rest. It did not care who had tried to own it. It did not care about the voicemail at 7:14, or about Fletcher's wine glass on my table, or about the word sweetheart said by 2 different women in the same day like a small, clean knife. It just kept working, because I had built it to. And so did I. There's something nobody tells you about being underestimated for a long time. You start to internalize it. Not all the way, you never completely believe it, but it seeps in at the edges. You start working harder to prove something to people who were never going to see it anyway. You mistake their approval for a destination. I did that for 3 years at that firm. I built something real and I handed it over every morning like I was grateful for the privilege of being allowed to use my own mind. And the people around me, Garrett, Beverly, even my own mother in her way, they all benefited from that. They took the warmth I generated, and they called it their fireplace. What Garrett did on the morning of my wedding wasn't just about the job. It was a calculation. He assumed that if he hit me at my most distracted, my most emotionally exposed, I would respond the way he expected, scrambling, apologizing, shrinking. He had seen enough people respond that way that it became his default assumption. The cruelty wasn't personal. It was just efficient, the way certain people treat cruelty when they've never been held accountable for it. And Fletcher, I've thought about Fletcher more than I expected to. Not with anger, really, more with a kind of tired clarity. He was a man who had never built anything, and so he spent an enormous amount of energy trying to position himself near things other people had built. When he walked toward my table that night with his wine glass, he wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to feel larger. That's its own kind of sad. The problem is that people like that tend to hollow out everything around them in the process. And Britain paid the price for that far longer than I ever did. What I keep coming back to is this. I was ready. Not lucky, ready. Wesley and I had done the work, filed the paperwork, understood the contracts, built the legal architecture months before anyone tried to take anything. That preparation wasn't pessimism. It was self-respect made practical. It was me deciding quietly that what I had built was worth protecting, even if no one around me had said so out loud. I think that's the thing worth sitting with. Nobody is coming to tell you your work is valuable before they try to take it. The people who benefit most from your labor are often the last ones to acknowledge what it's worth. You have to know first. You have to do the unglamorous work of understanding exactly what you have, what rights you hold, and what you would do if someone tried to walk off with it, not out of paranoia, out of self-knowledge. And when the moment came, when Garrett said, internally resolved, like I was a line item to be cleared, I wasn't devastated, I was clear. There's a difference between those two things, and the difference is preparation. The algorithm kept running. It still runs. It doesn't know anything about 7,014 voicemails or wine glasses placed uninvited on tablecloths. It just does what I designed it to do, reliably, without needing anyone's permission. I try to live a little more like that every day. What I want to ask you, genuinely, is this. Do you know what you've built? Do you know what it's worth? And who holds the rights to it? And what you would do if someone tried to decide for you that it was no longer yours? Tell me in the comments. I read them. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe, because there are more stories where this one came from.